So one rule, of course, to start all this is to very carefully study the online catalog before going to the library. So if you're going to go to the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, for example, if that were, it's now called the Family Search Library, by the way, as of officially a few days ago. So if you went to the Family Search Catalog in the Family Search Library in Salt Lake City, you would spend a lot of time spinning your wheels. And if you're physically going to be there in the library, unless you plan on being there every day for the next year or something, it's probably going to be difficult for you to learn and get any kind of orientation within a matter of days, because the materials are on different floors. Whatever you're looking for, if you ask people, they're not necessarily going to know instantly where it's located. The way to avoid that in any library is to look in their catalog and go through the catalog and see exactly what's in the catalog. I mentioned I was in the Library of Maryland, and they had a huge catalog in their library. Now, we do have a huge catalog. It's called WorldCat.org. And WorldCat.org is a catalog of catalogs. In other words, this is a conglomeration of over 2 billion catalog entries. They're probably up to 3 billion or something like that by now, but that's an old number. But it is called WorldCat, and it is the catalog of catalogs. The website's been recently redesigned, and it won't look familiar. If you haven't looked at it for a while, you go, oh, whoa, wait a minute. How do I use this? But it takes a few minutes, but you can get in. One thing that's important to understand is that now, and this is really recent, WorldCat catalog is now connected directly to libraries all over the world, which it has been for a long time, but now it's connected directly to archive.org. And if you pull up a document or book like this, The Story of Old Fort Johnson, and you need to have that book, there's a button over here that says access free. And if you click that, you're looking at the book in the Internet Archive in archive.org. And this will give you, this is the way you can look at a book on the archive.org, and you can read the whole entire book and see it. And in many cases, if it's not like this book, would not be copyright protected, or it might be. If it isn't, then you can download the whole book if you wish, or you can read it online. So this has become a phenomenal, very important thing to happen with WorldCat, that they're giving us links out directly out to where the books are located and where they can be read. So that makes this WorldCat catalog even more valuable than it has been in the past. And WorldCat Genealogy is a place where I always go to do research. I start research any general subject. I've done 6 videos for this 2023 Roots Tech conference that's coming up, and a presentation, live presentation, and all of those are researched by using WorldCat. So this is how you get into stuff, and this is kind of this quick glance at some of the type of materials and records that you can find by getting into worldcat.org. There is, in fact, a website that is part of WorldCat. WorldCat is run by a company called OCLC, and I think it's been used, the acronym has been used so long, it's very difficult to figure out what it originally was called. But OCLC also maintains the ArchiveGrid, and this is a map over, it says 7 million records, and that sounds like, well, that's not a whole lot, but that's just the archival records telling what's in all of these different archives. These are catalog entries, if you will, for the archives. And you can see those archives all over on a map. So if you want to put in your location and search, it will show you every archive around you in the United States. And so you can begin looking for archives. How do you get to ArchiveGrid? You search for ArchiveGrid online. If you're in Family Search and you go into the Family Search catalog and you notice what's going on, you'll notice that WorldCat and the ArchiveGrid are right there on the catalog pages of the Family Search catalog. And by the way, WorldCat now references you directly to Family Search. Well, it has for many years, but even more now because it's specific about finding things on the Family Search website. Now, all these archives have closed stacks. That means they're non-circulating, and you're going to have to work through whatever it is. So when you find an archive that you want to visit, start saying how or questioning online to see how you get in there. How do you have access this record stack? And also verify the conditions of use, the hours, and any copy restrictions. You may have to qualify as a researcher before you can use the archive. If you were to go to the Mayflower Society Library in Plymouth, Massachusetts, you would have to be a member of the Mayflower Society to use the library. So those are kinds of things that you might want to know. And also, you need to have a very good idea of what you're looking for and what your objectives are before you visit the Library of Archives. Check to see what restrictions apply to computers, smartphones, paper, pencils. Can you take pictures? Do you have to make copies? How much does it cost? The National Archives in Washington, D.C. has, over the years, has traditionally said you couldn't take anything in but a certain kind of pencil and some paper, nothing else. But now they're relenting and allowing in some circumstances, computers and smartphones. But I still think that they restrict the copying. There's three things you do to get started with all this. First of all, you find a book or other item related to the subject, and then to walk the shelves. Just to find a book or to do this when you're researching, you want to research means you've got to find something that talks about the subject that you're researching. And one of the things you do when you go into a library and you have access to it, it's open library, is you walk the shelves. Now, what does that mean? That means you walk up and down the shelves of the area where all the materials could be and look at each of the books, and if necessary, pull them off, looking to see if they relate to you. Now, when I go to the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, or the Family Search Library now, I will do that. I will go, for instance, to Rhode Island, and I will start by taking the books out of the first part of the Rhode Island section, putting them on the table, going through them page by page by page, looking at the index. If there's anything about Tanners or my family in there, then I will put it off to the side. And if there is, I will, where they can do that is at the Family Search Library, is take a picture of the page and the book and the title page of the book with the bibliographic information, the source citation information that I need. So by doing that, I save time. I'm not sitting there reading everything and doing all my studying there. I'm just gathering information and using the library as a resource, which is exactly the same thing as I would do online. That's way, by examining every book or item for content, that's how I find things in the library. Now it's phenomenally easier to take notes if you think of doing it with your phone rather than writing it down on a piece of paper. Because if you're going to look at a book, you take a photograph of the book, the title page, the publishing information, and then the pages that you need and the information that you need, and you're through with the book. And you've got that for reference when you have time outside of the library, unless you live in the library. Then you can use that by plugging your phone in or using Apple iPhones. I can simply upload those directly from my phone to my computer. So that solves the problem of getting that information up there on my computer. Or you can save all the images and everything to a cloud service such as Dropbox or Google Photos or Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive or any of the other online. One thing that you will find, that may be not as good in some places, is that there are usually computers available, at least Wi-Fi, a way to connect to the internet and use that to gather information while you're in one of these archives. Now, you have to be very careful to follow their rules. There may have rules against any of that. So photos or scanning may not be allowed. You may have to take notes and you may have to write the things out. But even in that case, you may be able to take in your computer and do some typing instead of having to handwrite. But there's still places where they don't do that. So always be prepared with pencils and paper and be prepared to pay for copies. The years ago, when I did research at the Family History Library, when it was a Family History Library in Salt Lake City, I had to take rolls of of quarters because I had to pay for copies of physical copies and spend a lot of money doing physical copies. Remember your stuff. It gets distracting to be in the library. You may get up and walk over to a shelf and get kind of involved in the shelf and leave your computer sitting on a desk or something and come back to find it's gone. So you just have to be careful when you're in these circumstances. These are usually public places, and you need to remember that you're in a public place.